We are live. We are live. Let's see. I'll move the phone over here so I can see my comments on YouTube. So now that we are here, let's go ahead and get into it. My name is Muse, and I am an artist and culture producer here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I love curating events. I love creating pathways for people to connect with each other, to find their communities, to find their people. And I have a launch lab coming up on August 15th where I'll be essentially training folks who want to launch their own events, who feel like wherever you find yourself living or being or doing whatever, um, and you know that you want to put something out into the world, you know you have an event, you know you have an idea, a concept, something that's been keeping you up in the middle of the night. I want to help you launch those ideas and put them out into the world so that the rest of the world can experience you externally, right? Through your events, through the ways that you curate and gather people, through your artwork, through your exhibition, through your poetry, through your musicianship, whatever it is. And you need the structure to pull those pieces together. I got you. And we're about to hop into it right now. So, again, thank you so much for being here. I want to remind us all of something simple but very, very important. Um, you didn't come into this room or you didn't come to the idea of being a culture producer as a hobbyist, right? You came in as a builder of culture. And this impacts our ability to remember our healing, our the feelings that we have around belonging, um, and absolutely our identity. And so, what you're shaping is what America or this world could literally feel like in the years ahead. So, like, what is being deposited in your mind that you know needs to exist outside of you that helps us to change the world, right? And we can do this through events. Like it's much more than just a DJ set or a poetry set or um, just random instances of people to coming together. These are absolute moments where we are impacting culture, where we can change culture, where we can shock culture on a large scale. So, right now, the world is changing very, very fast. And the global economy is definitely tightening, and we're feeling that. And a lot of cities everywhere are being forced to rethink how they create community, how they care for people, and how they build meaning in unstable times. And I was reading through The Economist. And The Economist calls culture, health, and sports the new soft power. And so that means the things we create in small rooms with small budgets for real people matter more than ever right now. We have about 6 more months in 2026 and 2027. Who knows? But we can be prepared with the things that we have to offer out into the world. Um, and so I am in the Southwest, and the Southwest is growing at a pace few places can match right now. Phoenix is adding tens of thousands of new residents every year, and the population is younger, it's more diverse, it's more global in its identity, and more in need of community than ever before. There are people coming here looking for belonging, they're looking for expression, they're looking for opportunities to connect, and for spaces um, that feel like community, right? Not just a performance of community, but they're looking for something that actually brings them together. We're not looking for the spectacles anymore, right? We're looking for things that make meaning. Um, and so last year in December, I put together a survey and I put it out into the world, and a lot of people responded, and people are still responding. So I'm very, very excited about this. And I'll do another review with these new responses. But from looking at the survey responses, it's like we're all feeling the same tensions around the works that we're putting out, around the events that we're coordinating, around the funding that we're able to get, around the partnerships and the sponsorships that we're able to get. And so we creatives, we artists, we culture producers are doing a whole lot with a little, right? We're navigating high venue costs, we're navigating limited access to space, burnout, and we're definitely navigating the feeling of being overlooked by institutions, right? If that is resonating with anybody, put a one in the chat. I just want to see who's here. If you're listening, if you're chiming in, also feel free to drop your name and where you're located. If you produce culture, if you are an artist that hosts events, if you're a DJ, a musician, a storyteller, any kind of creative, you're an artist, if you bring people together, drop a one in the chat. If this is resonating, drop a one in the chat, and let me know where you're joining in from. I'd love to see where you're joining in from. Just checking the chats on the different pages. All right. Thank you for pulling up. Thank you for joining. So, um, with that, we're producing culture that's full of life, right? We're doing the pop-ups, we're doing the film nights, we're doing the markets, we're doing the storytelling, we're doing the DIY classes, the movement spaces, dinners, maker labs, and wellness gatherings, and they all carry real depth, right? So what does that mean for us today? It means that the world ahead belongs, to culture producers who know how to work small and make it feel big, right? People who know how to create intimacy, who know how to create care and meaning, even while the resources are limited. People who know how to build community infrastructure when the economy is unpredictable. And also for the people who understand that culture should not be touted. No, that's not a word I'm looking for. Culture should not be lauded as entertainment, right? It is something that you participate in. It is not something for you to be entertained by, right? Um, it's survival, it's identity, it's soft power, it's economic value, it's emotional safety, and it is future building. What we do matters. What we produce matters. And since I am hyper local to Arizona, and the opportunity for the Launch Lab is open to everyone. It is 8 weeks. It is virtual. And you can find the links in my bio if you do some clicking around. So here in Arizona, where growth is definitely outpacing the systems that are supposed to hold us, a lot of us culture producers are not on the sidelines, right? We're the ones shaping how newcomers connect, how long-term residents get a chance to feel rooted in their communities, how different cultures are able to meet and connect and collaborate, how people heal, how communities imagine themselves, and also how we design this next chapter of place here. And so I just want to remind you and encourage us that your work is not just creative, it's also a civic responsibility, it is economic, right? And beyond that, it's ancestral, the art of gathering people, the art of convening people, bringing them together, right? And it's also a strategic tool for your own needs and your own growth. So today isn't necessarily about helping you make um, everything you're already doing and align it with where the world is going. But I do want to kind of tap into some of the global trends, some of the regional shifts, and I'll link it back to some of that survey data that I was telling you about, to show how exactly our work is not only relevant, but it's essential for a lot of the places that we find ourselves, and what we're building and the world we get a chance to inhabit. So it doesn't matter if you're making community dinners, if it's festivals, if it's workshops, if it's movement spaces, if it's I sit in the storytelling space, if it's music events, if it's markets, or if it's film, right? There's a space for your work in the future cultural landscape. And that's what I want this Launch Lab to help you to usher that out into the world, right? So let's keep going. So welcome to the room where the next chapter begins. Welcome to the room where it happens. Okay. So let's talk about We Produce Culture for a little bit. We Produce Culture is an 8-week intensive for creatives and community builders ready to turn event ideas into structured, revenue ready experiences. If that is something that you need, definitely let me know in the chat if this is what you're needing, if it's what you're looking for, um, and if you'd be interested. So make sure you're sharing the live, liking the live. I appreciate you all. And if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I'll get to a stopping place where I can read them through. If you have questions as we go through, please ask questions. This is for us. This is all for us. Okay. So back to We Produce Culture. So as a participant, you'll move from the inspiration of the idea that you have straight to execution by the 8th week. And we'll be developing your clear cultural purpose. We'll be helping you define your audience and venue strategy. We'll be building a realistic budget because that's where a lot of us get stuck, right? and a break even model as well. Because if you're a solopreneur and you're not in it for making the money, some of you may just be in it for making your money back, right? Some of us want to make this our business. Some of us want to um, have this just as something that we know that we're putting out into the world, and you don't necessarily want to make money from it, and that's fine. We can learn all of that here um, together. So you're learning that break even model, designing sponsorship offers, right? How can these costs be supplemented by a different entity, person, vendor, donor, funder, whomever? And then also, we'll be launching early ticket sales. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that was included for this particular launch lab was to make sure that um, you don't get to the end of it and then it's just it and you're left to your own devices to figure it out. No. Well, as you're going through the launch lab, each week we're gaining uh, um, experience and strategies to get you to the next week. And the whole time you'll end up marketing your event for 8 weeks, right? And any trusted event producer, depending on your market, right? A solid 8 week campaign will absolutely get you your first ticket sales. People like to see you in motion. People like to see you going. And so if you're going, if you're moving, if you have this motion behind you, this momentum behind you, then people are more willing to support and sign up. So you're not gonna just get the 8 weeks and then walk away and then be left to your own. No, by the end of the 8 weeks, you will have launched your ticket sales. You'll have all the marketing tools, everything you need to make sure that you get those first few butts in seats for your event. Okay. Um, so all this happens through guided workshops. Again, each week has a theme, and we're breaking down some of those things, and we'll get into some of that today. Real time implementation. Each of you will receive I'll help you to prepare a 3 minute fundraising pitch. Again, I sit in the storytelling space, and one of the things that a lot of culture producers don't do is have the story of the event that they want to put out, right? Who are you wanting to impact? Who is this event for? What tension are you looking to provide a solution for? What is that transformational experience that you're looking to bring to your audience? When they come to your event, they feel what kind of way? When they leave, you want them to have been impacted in what kind of way, right? So you'll get a 3 minute fundraising pitch and an opportunity to pitch to ensure that you get additional ticket sales for your event. Um, and this helps you to activate your concept at a final public showcase, right? I haven't decided if it's going to be virtual or in person, but you'll be able to showcase it. Showcase your event that you've been pulling together. And then ultimately, the program bridges creativity and sustainability, equipping you with the infrastructure needed to build impactful events that are both meaningful and financially viable. There is an investment cost for the 8 weeks. But there's also a drop-in price. So if you don't want to commit to the full 8 weeks, if there's a topic that you're more interested in than not, then you can just pull up on that particular day. Okay, cool. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the vision and what the culture producer's role is in this current ecosystem. So I call this the vision, right? And so right now for culture production, we're sitting in 2026, and we're also talking about culture production beyond 2026. And one of the things that culture production is doing now is more than event planning, and it's definitely more than just creative direction. It is a deliberate act of shaping the emotional, intellectual, and social fabric of a community through experience, right? And so your job as a culture producer is not just maintaining and coordinating logistics, you're crafting language, you're crafting mood, you're crafting meaning for an entire generation. Okay. And we'll get into the generational breakdown as well, because you got to know who you're talking to. You have to know who you're talking to. If you don't know who you're talking to, nobody's pulling up. Not a soul is coming. Okay. So I want to make sure that you know who you're talking to um, as we go through this, so you can get a better idea of what it is uh, to be a culture producer. And if you see yourself as a culture producer, and I'm sure most of you do, because we all just be pulling up and bringing folks together. So in 2026 and beyond, culture production is infrastructure. This is essential economic infrastructure to a city. I did not realize that the things that I was putting out into the world was so important until I started slowing down and paying attention to how decisions were made. And a lot of this is because of making sure to infuse myself into the city structure, right? So, what meetings are happening? Where do I need to go? Who's making the decisions? What do I need to listen to? And a lot of decisions are based on the hope that a culture producer will come in and activate a space, activate a building, activate outdoor parks, whatever, right? They create the space or the opportunity. We're the ones that have to rise up to meet it, right? So, okay. I'm seeing a few more people have joined. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining from. Make sure to like the live. Give me a thumbs up. If there's any questions, let me know if you have any questions so far. Nope, no questions so far. Trying to see why can't I go live on my IG. Oh well, we'll leave it be. Let's get back into it. All right, so what you're doing is more than just coordinating the logistics, right? And so for this year and beyond, we have to recognize and realize that culture production is infrastructure. It is the architecture of belonging. It asks, what does our community need to feel seen, connected, and inspired right now? Okay, gone are the days when culture simply happened. Today, we're intentional about impact, right? We're intentional about building ecosystems and not, thriving off of one-off events. We want to make sure that these are consistent, dependable events that people can trust that when it happens this time, it'll happen the next time. And that's also kind of one of the remedies of the Launch Lab is to help us to get out of the one-off. Trust me, I've been there. It's a whole process, but with the structure, with the knowledge, with the know-how, it can be done. So so now we're measuring success not only by attendance but by transformation, right? We want to now know who left more curious, right? Who left more alive, and who left more connected. And so culture production is also a form of creative advocacy. What it does is it disrupts sameness. Okay, it decentralizes gatekeepers and recenters imagination as a civic responsibility. Right now, I feel like a whole pastor. I'm about to say it again. Culture production is also a form of creative advocacy, right? It disrupts sameness, decentralizes gatekeepers, and recenters imagination as a civic responsibility. Okay. Right now, we're sitting and having to compete with all these algorithms, right? And so, what we're here to do is to remind folks that human connection is still our greatest technology. This is a tool towards liberation. So don't think that your jam night, your jam session, your DJ set is just something that you like to do on the side. Mm-mm. This is something that absolutely allows creativity, artistry to live on into the future. The more we tap in, the more we can change things. Okay. So before we move forward, I'll introduce myself again for any of the newcomers. I am a culture strategist. I'm an artist and founder of the Museum, which is a creative ecosystem dedicated to storytelling, culture production, and community connection. I have a few platforms, including Centered Phoenix. We produce culture, Muse Tees Prints, and Phoenix HBCU Connects. I create experiences, programs, and art that center Black stories, empower creatives, and activate spaces through culture. It is my jam. Now, let's get into your role within the cultural ecosystem. Okay. If artists are the heartbeat, then culture producers, are the pulse keepers. We translate vision into movement. We get those ideas and we can put them onto a timeline. some key milestones, right? Put us on the path to getting there. And we also create shared experiences. Our role as a producer is part strategist, we're part storyteller, we're part community builder. We balance art and logistics, we balance creativity and compliance, we balance spirit and structure. And ultimately, we hold space between the dream and the delivery of it, right? So, whatever it is that we are envisioning in our minds, we are stewards of how it gets to exist out into the world. And so, when we're thinking about this in a healthy cultural ecosystem, what that means is we do four things: we curate, we connect, we coordinate, and we catalyze, right? By curating, I mean that we ensure that every element aligns with a larger intention, right? So you have these themes. Let's take my storytelling events, for example. I did two parts to a theme called Dear Black Woman, and I did the first part to Dear Black Man. And I did these as storytelling themes because, for whatever reason, this year and years prior, for whatever reason, it felt like there is this reckoning happening with Black women where it would be more advantageous for us to talk to each other than at each other. And so I wanted the storytellers to come provide their stories, yes, but I wanted them to start the story with Dear Black Woman as a love letter from ourselves to ourselves, essentially, right? And it worked out very, very well. And so the overall experience from the dream of having a conversation with Black women on a larger scale, the dream of having it influenced the theme that I put together, which then influenced how the storytellers thought about themselves and the work that they were going to present to the community on stage, ultimately drove the run of show. And run of show is definitely going to be a part that we discuss in the launch lab, right? Because now every story then dictates what each 15 to 20-minute block of the actual event experience means. What does this story mean for the theme, for the storytellers, and then for the audience, right? All of these things matter as we're talking about curating an experience, right? So again, curating um, means that we're curating meaning of the experience. We're ensuring every element aligns with a larger intention. What is the overall intention that you're hoping to deliver from this event? Oops, 8 o'clock alarm. Hi, welcome in. Make sure you drop in a like, share the live. Let me know where you're coming in from. And if you have any questions, drop them and I'll be sure to circle back to answer them. The next one, we just talked about curate. Next, we're on to connect, right? Our other job is connecting. We want to make sure that we're connecting communities, we're bridging artists, audiences, and institutions, okay? And if you think any one of those groups of people aren't watching, you are sorely mistaken. Artists are watching, your intended audience is watching, and institutions are absolutely watching what just little old you are doing. Okay? A lot of major institutions are now finding themselves having to compete with the kinds of events that smaller culture producers have been having to do. I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but like there was a young lady on Substack who had an amazing article about museums now having to compete with experienced producers, right? So those of us that have been on the ground, convening people in out of the box ways and making sure that people can have access to culture and access to artists' expression and community. Now the museums are having to bring those kinds of aspects in house because now people don't have to go into a museum where culture and art is I want to say trapped, but the museums of old haven't necessarily changed their approach to community engagement, right? And so now you as a culture producer are competing with an institution who may have generations long history in the place where you find yourself living, where you want to activate. And now your poetry night is going to contend with whether somebody goes to a museum exhibition or not. It is that serious. Take what you put out into the world that serious because they are watching. Okay. Yeah. Tell me more about Atlanta. Black women are art. I love that. I love that. I love that. Tell me more about Atlanta. I'm in Phoenix, and so um, from a larger scale, a lot of these larger institutions are they trying to come for our bag. We weren't coming for theirs, but it lets you see the shift of where humans are wanting and willing to spend their attention and their monies versus institutions and their inability to meet us in the future. Okay, so that's curates, that's connects. Okay, third is oh, I love the High Museum. I love the High Museum. I went there for there was a Basquiat exhibit where they had his notebooks, like his sketch pads and stuff. It was really, really dope. Yeah, I would agree. High Museum is dope. It is dope. Anything that you're seeing in Atlanta from like the poetry nights, the jam sessions, open mics, um, what else? Storytelling, anything coming up from like the small promoters or producers that just gather people, convene people, things that are happening in the park, yoga, what else? Any stretch classes, the run clubs, fitness clubs. Like, what are you seeing kind of as the trends that are happening in Atlanta? Okay. And as you're responding, I'm gonna go on to the third one. So we had curates. Oh yeah, dope. So we had a first Friday experience. It lasted for years and years here, but they're in the process of, I guess, reimagining what that looks like in the future. But yeah, first Fridays are dope, and it's a consistent, dependable time of monthly thing. ATL is always doing 50. I love it. Listen, ATL is a creative's dream, right? I feel like if you have a solid concept and you're able to do some solid marketing, you can pop your shit in Atlanta because it's such a diverse state of mind, um, regardless of the population. Right. What I love the most about Atlanta, and now I'm about to get off script, but what I love the most about Atlanta, and people can say what they want. I'm from Mississippi, so you can't tell me shit about the South. Um, But what I love most about Atlanta is that although it is a very black place, it is the most diverse black place you'll ever find in your life. Okay, like you're gonna have your nerds, your gamers, your strip club, your the hood, the homies, the doctors, the artists. Um, and they could all be at the same club on a Friday night. Like I love the diversity of community, the diversity of identity that people are able to experience in Atlanta. Let me know if I'm way off. All of us exist. Yes, 5011 flavors of black. Yes, exactly. 5011 flavors of black. Absolutely, absolutely. Do you produce culture? Do you host any events or anything like that? Black women are art. I'm gonna just pause here since we're making conversation to see if there's any questions coming up. No questions so far. Okay. Retreats and writing. Dope. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, I hope this information is helpful. Okay, dope. This is for you then? I hope this information is helpful. Um, right now, I'm going through the our role in the cultural ecosystem. So we went through curates, went through connects, coordinates. Right. So the other third responsibility that we have is coordinating, and that means systems that sustain creativity beyond the moment, right? Thank you. Thank you for listening. So systems that sustain creativity beyond the moment. Okay, so you hosted the open mic, you put out the poetry show, you did the jam session, you did it, and then what? Right? Were you collecting emails? Did you have conversations with people at the end to give you a better understanding of what went right, what went wrong, especially if it's your first one, right? Or do you have a survey ready to go at the wrap up of your event? Because you have to get the informed information and consent of the people that you're wanting to create for. You got to talk to them. You got to listen to them, right? And so you want to make sure that you have systems that sustain creativity beyond the moment. Doing an event one time does not ensure that you're going to have an event a second time unless you have an event the second time, right? None of this is magical work. This is all putting in that work. If you want to do it one time, if you want to do it, fine. If you want to do it more than once, then you need to be prepared to do it more than once and structure the first one with the vision that the second one will be happening, that the third one will be happening, that the fourth one, that the annual, that the quarterly, that the bi-weekly or weekly, whatever, will be happening. Okay? Believe in yourself enough to know that what you have been selected to put out into the world will be picked up and admired and adored by the people that you're looking to create it for. Right? Trust yourself enough to know that it deserves to exist out into the world. Okay? So curate, connect, coordinate. It made me think about anyway, you got to coordinate. Last one, catalyze. Okay? We are responsible for catalyzing change by designing experiences that shift perception and spark dialogue. What the people talking about when they leave your event? Right? Are they sharing it? Did they make a reel? Did they do a review? Did they tag their friends? The next time that they come for that second one that you're already anticipating having, do they bring an additional friend? Word of mouth is still very, very much so a marketable strategy. How do you get the people talking so that they are intrigued enough to come back? Okay, that's those are our four responsibilities: curate, connect, coordinate, and catalyze. Okay, all right. Now, here's where we get a little discouraged sometimes. As culture producers, we move unseen, but we are deeply felt, right? And so you have to know that every great movement, every renaissance was not an accident, okay? It was produced, it was planned, and it was nurtured by people who believed that creativity could change the condition of life itself, okay? So if you are planning the retreat, if you are planning the band session, the jazz night, the concert, the festival, whatever it is, right? How you have it in your mind is absolutely a part of a bigger plan or a movement that you don't even know you're a part of. How you're impacting culture, how you're moving us forward, how we get to exist in the future. The kinds of things that we buy into now are the things that we're telling the universe that we want to participate in the future. So, do we want poetry and storytelling nights and retreats and all that stuff to exist in the future? If the answer is yes, then you have to answer your call to put it out into the world. These two are callings, and as an artist, um, no one ever explained it to me in this way. I started listening to Vanessa Aldridge. She's on YouTube, she's on TikTok, and if you have not followed her, please follow her. If you are an artist that is deconstructing, an artist that is lost, that doesn't necessarily know their way or whatever, and you need a supplement for the church sermons that you used to do on a Sunday, I highly encourage you to check out Vanessa Aldridge on YouTube. She has this challenge called 75 Hard for Your Creativity. It's the Villains Challenge. I may be messing up the name, but if you catch some of the free information she puts on her page, what we have been given as artists, creatives, culture producers, event producers, promoters, these are spiritual gifts. Bringing people together to ensure a transformation of their life, even though that's probably not even what you think of you hosting an after party, right? But only you can host the after party, right? Only you can bring the people together. Only you can ensure that the people have an amazing experience. These are spiritual gifts. And if someone have talked to me about my creativity and spirituality in this kind of way, I would have launched a long time ago. But to know that bringing people together is a gift, and how you bring people together doesn't have to look like you're bringing them together in a church or a synagogue. It's the same thing. Same thing, right? I like to listen to tarot readings and different collective readings, right? And I was sitting up one day and I was like, this collective reading ain't nothing but a sermon, right? Like, it's all pointing us back to ourselves and ensuring that what we put out into the world matters, right? Anyway, I got off on a little tangent. So, um, anyway, the Renaissance movement spaces, all these things are strategically planned for because somebody, the visionary, is able to see and far enough into the future to say, this needs to happen. This needs to take place. So your salons, your organizing, your documentary screenings, your skate nights, your bike nights, your barbecues at the park, all of that it is a calling. Yeah, we are meant to gather together. Absolutely. And the people called to gather people, you got to know it's a calling. Because we've been to some events where you can tell it is not that person's calling to bring people together. You can tell when you're in an experience where it's just about the dollar. You can tell when you're in an experience where all of the speakers or the people on the panel just came for the viral moment. You can tell. You can tell. But of the experiences, the coffee nights, the pottery nights, the paint and sips, of those, any of these experiences, and I can go on and on, of any of these experiences, you know when that facilitator has been put in the right place at the right time to do a paint and sip, to do a cocktail mixing class, right? To do a wine tasting. All money ain't good money. You're right. Right? So think about what we're doing on a much larger scale, right? It's not just throwing an event. I want us to respect ourselves and our creativity much, much more because what we're putting out is very, very important. Okay. All right. So now that we have kind of talked through the responsibilities of a culture producer, now that I've talked to you, the culture producer, let me help you talk to your particular target audience. And I'm going to do it. I sat down. I started kind of watching some of the trends of some of the clubs closing here in Phoenix, paying attention to the cultural landscape across the country. And again, studying trends and figuring out how are people moving, how are humans behaving. And a lot of nightclubs ain't they're not sustaining like they used to, right? Some of the strippers are also kind of recognizing that we are in a bit of a crisis. So the after hours scene is about to be changed. Why? Because Gen Z has a different relationship with vices. This impacts the events that are going to happen in the future. Okay, Gen Z does not drink as much as my generation or the generation before, right? They're practicing a whole lot more sobriety. So, what does this mean for your events? If your target audience is Gen Z, okay? If your target audience is millennials, what are some of the behaviors, some of the life experiences, some of the things that culturally impacted us? Uh, okay. Hi, Burnt Crumbs. I don't know who you are, but hello and welcome to the conversation, I guess. Um, so, um, make sure that you're able to talk to who you're wanting to create this for, right? So you have, so there's Gen Z, millennials. I'm going to talk through Gen X. I'm going to talk through boomers. And then we're going to bring it all together. Um, and then we'll talk a little bit about the anatomy of culture. Okay. So for now that we have like an understanding of some of the global trends, I've talked a little bit about um, um, local shifts happening right here in Arizona. Hold on one second. Um, let's bring in this last little piece to the puzzle. Oh, I am fading away right before y'all's eyes. Hold on. Okay. All right. So let's see. Presenting the generational cultural buyer matrix. Let's see. Okay. So now again, we went through those some of those global trends, some of the local shifts happening here in Arizona, we kind of talked a little about what's up, what's up, what's up. We talked a little bit about some of the trends happening in Arizona. Thank you. And what's happening across the country. And if you're seeing any trends or changes happening from the cultural landscape, definitely pop it down into the chat. I want to see if we're all on the same page, if we're all kind of seeing the same things. So let's get into it. So this is where things get interesting, okay? Because every generation across the country, right, in the different regions, are responding to culture in very different ways. And the more we understand those differences, it makes it easier to become, I'm sorry, it makes it easier to design events that actually hit, right? So I'm going to walk you through the cultural buyer matrix. I want you to think about this not from a marketing jargon perspective or anything like that, but as real people, okay? Real people who show up to your events, real people you design for, okay? So let's talk about Gen Z. Gen Z, hold on, let me get a little sip of tea. Gen Z is our cultural identity, sorry, Gen Z is our identity first, community hungry, digital native generation. They want belonging, they want representation and experiences that feel immersive and sensory. They are also very price conscious, so they look for low cost, high impact moments. Okay. A lot of Gen Z did not have what we had, which were third spaces, essentially, right? So there's a lot of youth development funds, a lot of arts programs, all of those federal fundings. When those things start to get cut, they have an overall hit to the culture. Okay. And so Gen Z, not necessarily having those similar third space experiences, some, but not the same. Um, they're now looking at community in a different way. They're now looking at gathering in a different way. They're now looking at being around people in a different way. Pairing that with human behavior and some of the trends of that, now we have a lot more autism, ADD, ADHD diagnoses in from the Gen Z generation. Not to say that it doesn't exist in the others, but now the culture of medicine has it so that we're not able to identify with uh, with ADHD, ADD having the diagnosis, right? So this now illuminates the social anxiety that a lot of folks have when they're going out to events, right? So if you are curating spaces specifically for Gen Z, you have to keep these things in mind as you're trying to gather them in groups, okay? A lot of folks don't like to be in large crowds. A lot of people don't like to be around a lot of people. And if they do like to be around a lot of people, you're going to have to be the person that curates the conversation. Okay. How are they talking to each other? How do you get people to talk? Right. When I was going to the clubs, everybody was dancing. We was all in that thing sweating. Okay. Now you go to the club, for the most part, I haven't been to a club in a while, but the last few times I've been, people are lining up the walls and recording everything and on the phone, right? How do you get people? Oh yeah, definitely heightened with COVID for sure, right? So how do you get people to put the phone down and experience what you're producing? This is a conversation with the DJ. This is a conversation with the people at the door. This is a conversation with the bartenders, right? If you're activating in club spaces, how are you curating that space to when the community that you're serving or want to produce this thing for, they're coming in, and what is the experience? What are their expectations, right? Remember those 4 C's? How are you curating it? How are you connecting? How are you coordinating? And how are you catalyzing this experience, right? So that then when they leave, they're telling people, oh, you got to go. I felt, when we have great customer service, we're telling everybody, right? When we have bad customer service, we're definitely telling everybody, right? But sometimes people don't say anything, whether good or bad, right? So sometimes you have to be prepared for the invisible opportunity to ensure that this event gets to the second event. And you want to make sure that people are talking about it in a way that you don't necessarily take it as criticisms, but you're only one person. You're only a human being. And so you can't catch everything. So sometimes the complaints can absolutely be welcomed because it helps you to see a blind spot that you didn't have. Okay. So Gen Z is also the group that already aligns with the global trends. Okay. The economists predicted they're looking for a hybrid culture. They're looking for diasporic music. So that they have a very diverse ear when it comes to music. Wellness. They're looking for wellness events. I'm sure we've seen a blast of run club culture, fitness culture, yoga, Pilates. What else is the bike where you're oh my gosh, what is this called? The fitness class where people be on the bikes, but they're stationary bikes. Anyway, all these things are taking off, right? Cycling. Thank you, Aunt. Cycling, right? All of these things are taking off now because Gen Z has a different relationship than with a lot of vices that we used to partake in, right? So they're living a much more sober life. So a lot of connecting and culture is built around that. And then also cross cultural community. I know on TikTok, I see a lot of uh, cosplay is one of the ones where I'm just it definitely brings me joy to see how folks are engaging with cosplay and the different cons that are happening. How they are doing hair art has been amazing. Yeah, Comic Con is a good one. Um, and also learning different languages. There's songs, there's music. The World Cup was a great eye opener around who's watching soccer and the music that's involved and the artists that are involved. And so Gen Z is looking for those cross cultural moments. So as you're thinking through your events, and if Gen Z happens to fall within your target audience, what does that mean for where you're geographically located? Right, I'm in Phoenix. And are you still in Chicago? Black Women Are Art is in Atlanta. So now, as we think through our events, what cross cultural opportunities can we infuse into our events? Right? What what different diasporic music can we include, or a DJ? Right? Are they fusing tracks together? Are they doing blends? They're doing mashups, the whole nine, right? You doing a live band with a DJ, or you got a drummer over with the DJ. Like, how are you curating an experience through every stage of what you're wanting them to come in and do with you once they come to your event? All right. So, what works for them? If we're being specific, if you don't have a specific way that you're attracting Gen Z, fine. So here's what works for them. I'll give you some ideas if Gen Z is the audience that you want to work with. Pop ups, so pop up shops, pop up thrifting, pop up painting, pop up markets. All of that is a Gen Z's jam. Okay. Hybrid events. This is virtual, this is in person, right? Where they have options. Creative labs, right? The Arizona Science Center here has, they do adult nights and they do different little science experiments, or they have like the drinks named after different science experiments or parts of science. It's all backed into that bigger theme of science, right? But it's a great way to attract a new target audience into your space that may only be deemed as an educational institution that a lot of students are only being bussed into there. But what does that mean for the adults that still have a scientific passion, right? How do you meet your audience within what you're already doing, where you're not going beyond what you're staying true to, but you're able to attract them anyway? Okay. What else? We got nightlife adjacent experiences, transit friendly adventures. Um, Gen Z, they have cars. Um, However, as a society, as things are getting more expensive, having a car in the age of Lyft and Uber and Waymo and public transportation, right? They may not be they're not necessarily gung-ho to buy a car, right? So they're taking the all of the alternatives. So what does this mean for your events? And accessibility. Where are you going to have it? Do you have a ramp? Is it only stairs? Is it elevators, right? Can it be easily found? Where are they going to get dropped off at? Is it safe? Can they ride their bike? Can they ride their scooter? Can they walk? Right? So think about, when you think about venues, think about some of those things if Gen Z is your audience. What else? Anything that feels like culture in motion. They're innovative. They are future forward. They are literally, through this creator economy, through what's happening here on TikTok, what's happening in social media in general. They are literally showing us that anything is possible. People are making real money off of sitting up on TikTok talking. There's a guy I saw, he has a toothpick and like a fish tank of chocolate, and he just he's just all live just doing this. And people sit and watch. I ain't here to judge it. I'm saying that there's an audience for what you have. And if you got it and you feel like um you're not ready yet, I promise you there's an audience waiting for you. Okay? So just a closing thought for Gen Z before we move on to millennials. Gen Z are going to be your early adopters. They're going to be curious. They're going to be creative, right? They want to be a part and in a room that's good and a room that travels. They're going to be the ones that spread the word. Yep, there's a community for everything. They're going to be the ones that spread the word. So make sure that you're doing your deep dive on your audience in a way that you know what their cultural habits are, right? What time do they wake up in the morning? Are they in school? Are they working? What is the current state of Gen Z? And if you have an event already in mind that could meet the Gen Z where they're at, then do it. If not, then you'll need to immerse yourself in spaces where Gen Z is to have an understanding of what Gen Z is looking for. You will have to become a studier of your craft. And if your craft is a poetry night, if your craft is being a promoter at the club, if your craft is hosting dinner series, if you're a chef, if your craft is a DJ, you will have to be a consumer in a way that you want people to consume you. So you're gonna have to go to somebody else's DJ night. You'll have to go to somebody else's dinner series. You'll have to go to somebody else's poetry night, somebody else's storytelling event, right? Or just observe your particular target audience out in the wild. Go sit in a park, go to the mall, just become a people watcher and see what the habits are of people. How are they striking up conversations? What are they more prone to talk about than not? Right? All this helps you to build the best event that you can build. And as you're coming in, I have an 8-week launch lab that will be kicking off on August 15th. It is 8 weeks where I walk you through a lot of game, a whole lot of game I have acquired in these last 13, 14 years of doing this. I feel like the number changes every time I say it, but I don't remember. I've been doing this a while. um Hold, okay, I don't know why it does that. So it's an 8-week launch lab, August 15th to October 3rd. It's on Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It is all virtual, so you can join from anywhere. There is an investment for the full 8 weeks, but you can also do drop-in pricing, and that is broken out in that way as well. You can check that out on the museum.com at We Produce Culture at the top, and make sure to read through. And I hope to have you. I hope to have you. I'm going to do a few more of these because I don't think people think about their events in a way that um, helps them to know that it's something that they can realistically do, and it's not just a little event. Like these have economic decision making, repercussions. So, okay, so that's Gen Z. Millennials. Let me take a pause, make sure I don't have any other questions. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right, millennials. So moving on to the millennials. This is the burnout recovery generation. We are recovering from lots of things. Our generation, I think, was probably the first one that took therapy seriously, right? The first ones that took um, uh, meaning meaningful connections seriously, right? Cultivating communities, that third space energy, right? The YMCA's, the Boys and Girls Club, the going over to your cousin's house after the bus drop you off until your mama get off work, right? And intermingling with different communities. It makes me think about Craig of the Creek. I don't know if any of y'all watched that, but that's my show. I love me some Craig of the Creek. But what I love about Craig of the Creek is just this little black boy with his family. They live in a neighborhood, and when he goes out to be with his friends in the backyard, there's a creek that connects them. You got to be quiet, okay? Quiet on the creek. But they go out and they have all these different adventures out in the woods, right? And it definitely transports me back to my own childhood of just being out in the neighborhood, riding a bike, connecting with your neighbors, knocking on your neighbor's door to see if your friends can come outside, right? That's the generation that we come from, right? So we gather differently. We're not afraid to ask people, hey, you want to go to a movie with me? You want to go to this concert with me, right? But we are a burnout recovery generation. We are burnt out. Okay, we want depth, we want safety, we want meaningful connection, and curated energy. Okay, we want to know if you're a Gen Z, chime in. If you are a culture producer that happens to attract, I'm sorry, millennials. If you attract millennials to your events, if you are a millennial, we love a good agenda. Like what's happening? What is happening on the agenda? Um, what time do we need to be there? What time does the event actually start? Right? These are all cultural questions that happen when you're producing events and when you attend events, right? So we're choosing a slow life over a loud life, right? You have this soft girl era. You have uh, was it 4B decentering? You have deconstructing from religions and sororities, fraternities. You have all these things where people are shutting out the outside world and they're coming home to themselves, right? So if you are curating for millennials, you have to keep these kinds of things in mind, right? Choosing a slow life over a loud life. And for this 2026 forecast, it was written specifically for millennials, like it had to be. So as we're seeing the economy is tightening, millennials are looking for intentional, intimate experiences that feel restorative, right? Right now, small events are taking over. The micro dinners, micro events, the events that have 15 to 20 people. I was watching Black House Radio on YouTube, and it's just a DJ in the living room with about maybe 15 to 20 people, and they're recording it. And the people are getting down, sweating, fans, red cups, the whole nine. Like it's a vibe. But it doesn't have to be this large club experience anymore. We are now millennials are now looking for the smaller, curated experiences with people that we may or may not know, but it would be good to be in the room with them, right? Like we are definitely the generation of like, who all gonna be there? Because we need to know. And you need to know this about your audience. If you're a millennial, creating for millennials, you need to know the human behaviors of the generation. Okay. So again, the events that reach the millennials, if you didn't have an idea, the events that reach millennials are those curated dinners, like I talked about. Anything around rest and creating rituals, right? Those retreats, those um, what else? Sound baths, yoga sessions, Pilates, right? Again, I told you all that stuff is on the rise, and that sits right in the core of what a millennial is interested in, if this is your audience. Um, Cycle syncing is big for a lot of millennial women, right? So if you identify as a woman and you have a period, cycle syncing is something that not only you can do to impact how you plan for your events, it is also a way for you to understand on a grander scale of when to host the event, right? Because energetically, spiritually, we are all going through these different cycles week to week. And if you're the one curating it with, and if your target audience is also women, right? Then these are elements that you can keep in mind to build out your marketing campaign, to build out how your event is going to be experienced, um, the ticket pricing, when to put the tickets on sale, because everything matters when it comes to launching the event, right? Sometimes you want to launch it on Friday, sometimes you want to launch it on Tuesday. All of this is determined by the audience that you're choosing to speak to. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Thank you for joining. If you're joining, my name is Muse. We're talking about We Produce Culture, which is an 8-week launch lab that I am putting out for folks, for creatives, community builders. If you're ready to turn your event ideas into structured, revenue-ready experiences, I want to help you move from inspiration to execution by helping you to develop a clear cultural purpose, define your audience and venue strategy, build a realistic budget and break-even model, design your sponsorship offers, and launching early ticket sales. Right? It's 8 weeks of workshops and real-time implementation, and you'll walk away with your 3-minute pitch for fundraising, and you'll also have your tickets going live by the 8th week. to ensure that your event happens. Okay. So let's keep talking about the millennials a little bit, and then we'll move on to Gen X. Um, we talked about sound baths. We talked about cycle syncing. We talked about journaling sessions, journaling events. Stationary businesses are doing very well now because again, millennials have a different relationship with therapy, and therapy encourages most folks to write. Right. So now the journals are up and moving as a product. So if you are looking to host these kinds of things, um, then think about how do you incorporate a journal? How do you create a journal, right? These are things that your audience will be looking for. And then also seasonal cohort-based creative journeys. So I'm going to put that in the retreat piece, where people are looking for, a week getaway, a weekend overnight retreat, something with a transformation built into it. Okay. So overall, this generation wants to feel better when they walk out than they did when they walked in. And they're willing to invest a little more for that, right? A lot of us finally got the McDonald's money. Finally got the McDonald's money. And if it's worth it, we'll do it, right? Hold on, let me set up my camera here. All right. So that's millennials. For our Gen X, I just need to get my phone charged a little bit, so it's gonna be a little wonky. Sorry. For Gen X, our quiet storm generation, these folks, their characteristics are high responsibility, high stress, often overlooked. They want meaning. They want something attached to a legacy. They like a good leadership and they like a good structure. Okay. That means you're gonna have to start your events on time if you are targeting Gen X. All right. They don't want to do all that waiting around. They don't want to do all that overextension of the opener, right? They're looking for things to be on a schedule, and they want that ship to run tightly. And there ain't nothing wrong with it. It makes you a better event producer overall. But this is what they're looking for when they come into your events. Okay. Um, in Arizona, where I am, it's currently adding a lot of Gen X transplants from more expensive cities. Okay. And they're looking for grounding, and they too are looking for connection. And so the forecast says cities will rely heavily on culture producers to build emotional infrastructure. And that's exactly where Gen X fits in. What works for them are those salons, right? Think about those conversations. Think about Harlem Renaissance and rent parties, right? Think about when those artists gathered together in living rooms, in the basements of churches, and just began to feed off one another's creativity and what they could put out into the world, right? These conversations about change. So salons, again, these work for Gen X. Storytelling experiences. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, with my storytelling platform, Gen X loves to tell stories. They enjoy providing information. They enjoy um, sharing to the next generation what their experiences were. Now, through storytelling events, not from a person to person experience. You know, experiences may vary, but from an event producer perspective, from a culture producer perspective, storytelling gets them out of the house every single time, especially if you have a theme. Okay. They also enjoy leadership roundtables, right? How can we make change? How can we impact change? Again, remember the genre, the era that Gen X has come from, and what motivates them, right? And so a lot of these roundtables, community roundtables, these conversations, especially around politics, these conversations around elections, right? If you are in the organizing space, um, if you're in the organizing space, if you are um, a political leader, if you operate in those kinds of spaces, then you have to study your target audience and who you're expecting to come out. Okay. So, high end dinners. So, this is where you could potentially have a higher ticketed event, um, and being able to market it to Gen X. Again, making sure that there's an agenda, there's a clear understanding of the menu, the whole nine, right? And again, those community conversations, but you got to make sure that they feel calm, smart, and curated. Okay. Gen X wants to reconnect with their creativity without feeling foolish or out of place. And that is very, very important, especially if you are an artist, a creative. I used to own a paint and sip business, and I had 4 artists. And one of the things that would always happen is that without a doubt, somebody's going to come in and say, "Oh, I don't know how to." I'm not an artist. I don't know how to paint. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Right. And it's all these excuses. And what happens most times is, as a facilitator or the teacher at the time or the lead, or if I'm in there floating around, there's a lot of conversations to be had around regaining their confidence and being creative. Right. What I'm also learning is that Gen X, around the time that they existed, being creative was not necessarily the safest route. It was not an encouraged route from their foreparents or the people of their generation at that time. So when they do come into these creative practices, they will need a bit more care, and curation to unleash themselves creatively. All right. And that's just because of the generation that they came from. So you got to make sure that you give them dignity, depth, and a space to breathe. Because sometimes it can be overwhelming when you finally do tap into your creative self. I know we don't think of it as that important or that serious, but it really is that important. It really is that serious. Okay. All right. So moving on to boomers. So we have our boomer generation. These are the patrons. They are the heritage keepers. They are the ones who love the arts but want comfort and clarity. Okay. Now, if you activate in the daytime, this is probably going to be your people. They attend daytime and early evening events. Okay. They care about tradition and impact, and they hold a lot of philanthropic power, which matters for cultural infrastructure. Okay. The forecast shows cities leaning on culture more than ever. And boomers respond to that. They see the value. What works for them, they like artist talks, right? So if you're an artist that has an exhibition, the boomers want to know the story behind your artwork. They're going to come to an artist, they're going to come to the opening. They're going to stick around for the panel discussion. They're going to talk about your experience in creating what it is that you're creating. Okay. They want to know what it's about. Matinee workshops. So if you're doing a screening, documentary, showing a movie, and again, if boomer is your target audience, right? Think about some of that matinee time of day. They may potentially be retired. They may have the time. A lot of grandparents are different kinds of grandparents these days. So they may have the time. They may have the residual income of being able to come out during the day. Some of them may also still be in the remote work culture. You never know who you're tapping into, and you don't want to put your particular generation into a box. We just have to be aware of the kinds of things that are happening culturally around the time when they were born and how they were socialized. And a lot of that information will help you to better understand how to curate for them. Okay. So for the boomers, think about those matinee hour workshops, 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 10 to 12, 11 to 1, that kind of stuff. If you are in the philanthropy space, if you're in the nonprofit space, the donor dinners. Okay. How do you get your audience that is already predisposed to philanthropy? Because when people think about philanthropy, they're not thinking about Gen Z, they're thinking about boomers and Gen X. So if you have an organization that needs to fundraise, that needs to do these different things to drive revenue, have a donor dinner. Partner with a chef, a local chef, highly curate a 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 person dinner of the necessary folks that need to be in the room to talk to each other, sharing a meal and striking up a conversation, right? This is the strategy of it, but you can absolutely get what you need at the end of it. Okay. Festivals, heritage festivals, if it's a pizza festival, if it is a food and wine festival, if it is any kind of a jazz festival, anything that either ties to heritage, identity, or arts and culture, out of the box. This generation knows the importance of the preservation of these kinds of things. And so the more that you can link it back to a nostalgic cultural moment, it's going to bring out the boomers without a doubt. Without a doubt. Okay. Overall, you want to make sure that these events show cultural preservation and community impact. They have to have meaning for our boomers. Okay. You don't want to think of these boomers as attendees. You want to think about them as potential investors. All right. They will absolutely support what feels meaningful and well organized. All right. So as we bring this all together, when we put the matrix together, we were able to kind of see a bigger, clearer picture. Okay. So to bring it back home, Gen Z brings innovation, millennials bring depth, Gen X brings stability, boomers bring the historical landscape or historical context with them by way of legacy and resources, right? Now, this is a full cultural ecosystem. And the takeaway I want you to walk away with is that your events don't have to reach everybody. That's not what I am encouraging you to do. I just want you to make sure that you're reaching the right someone. Okay. So once you know who you're talking to, you can choose the right scale, the right format, the right price point, and the right message. Okay. Now this matrix becomes your blueprint. And it lets you create cultural events that are future proof, community centered, and aligned with the world we're about to step into. Okay. Any questions? How long have I been on now? Let's see. I've been on for an hour. No questions. I don't see any questions. Okay. There are no questions. So I'll just leave you with this again. If you are available August 15th through October 3rd, these are Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Um, this is an 8-week launch lab. If you have an event, if you have an idea, if you have a concept that you want to put out into the world, I highly encourage you to sign up for the Launch Lab. It's going to be an amazing experience. It is going to be an opportunity for you to bring your ideas to the table. I'll walk alongside you each week, and we'll make sure that it is launched by October 3rd. And with that, I am going to end the live. I hope to see you all. Feel free to share it, continue to talk about it. If you have any questions after this is wrapped, feel free to DM me. I would love to help you on your journey. Bye.